And we're kicking off with SmackDown, as John Cena was on the show with a statistic few people will have known beforehand, that he hasn't won a televised singles match since 2018. More specifically, it had been 2,002 days since Cena's hand was raised in victory in a singles match, equivalent to 5.5 years, and Cena wanted to change that. When John made an open challenge, Solo Sikoa answered it, but this was an ambush that led to Jimmy Uso getting some cheap shots in on the greatest of all time. While many expected LA Knight to come to John's rescue, it was actually Raw's Jey Uso, clearly still ticked off at his brother for costing himself and Cody Rhodes the tag team titles on Raw. Jey came out masked for SmackDown, earning a huge pop when he revealed his face, and while fans were excited, Nick Aldis was far from pleased that a Raw superstar had attacked a SmackDown talent. Aldis issued a $10,000 fine to Jey, and despite Adam Pearce trying to resolve things peacefully, Aldis had both Jey and the Raw GM escorted from the building. Pearce responded, clearly stating, "Let the games begin," likely a huge hint at Survivor Series War Games, where these issues can be settled in the ring. John Cena didn't win a singles TV match this week, and with Cena's recent run with WWE set to end soon, how many more opportunities in the ring will he get? During a Fightful Q&A, Sean Ross Sapp confirmed that Cena will be on next week's show, and since that'll be a double taping, he'll also be able to appear on the episode that'll air on November 3rd. As for events after November 3rd, it's unclear, but Cena has been advertised for Crown Jewel on November 4th, even if an opponent has yet to be named. After this, WWE will embark on a European tour in Hamburg, Berlin, and London, but it remains to be seen if John will be competing at these shows. It was during last week's SmackDown that Nick Aldis was introduced as SmackDown's new general manager, following reports earlier this year that WWE was interested in him. It was also stated that AEW was also interested in the British star, but it turns out that the British star had previously turned down the offer to become All Elite. Speaking with TV Insider, Aldis' wife and Impact Wrestling star Mickie James spoke about her husband turning down a previous offer with AEW. She said, "It's really interesting. When I was back at WWE, there was an opportunity for Nick to go to AEW. He turned it down because it was too much on our family for him to be on the road full-time along with me. Our son Donovan was 3 or 4. I think about it now, and it has shifted. Nick has deserved this opportunity for a long time. A lot of people don't realize he's been at this for almost 20 years, I'd say, the way our careers have gone. It's weird not really being in the same place for long, but I think it's by design. We have to do our best for our son first. That means someone has to have a lighter schedule." Business picked up for the Aldis family. In the wrestling world, if people don't know who Nick Aldis is, they will. He's an incredible talent. Aldis has signed a full-time contract with WWE, but will likely only be making TV appearances for the company. And do you think Aldis made the right call? Sound off in the comments down below. Paul Heyman kicked off SmackDown with idle threats aimed at LA Knight ahead of Knight's Crown Jewel match with undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns. Knight wasn't going to stand for these threats and had a warning of his own, telling Heyman that he and Reigns best not miss if they decide to take a shot at him. A simple enough promo, this further solidified Knight as SmackDown's top babyface and proved that he is growing into the role with every passing week. Knight held his own with Heyman on the mic, had the fans in the palm of his hands, and helped sell the match with Reigns, all further evidence that LA Knight was made for the spot he's in. On commentary, it was announced that Reigns and Knight will sign the contract for Crown Jewel on next Friday's SmackDown on FS1, giving fans an incentive to tune into the show on its different channel. The drama of Jimmy and Jey Uso continued after this week's SmackDown, when Drew McIntyre was around and faced Jey Uso in a dark match. The match was marred by interference from Jimmy, and while the treacherous brother attacked Jey, McIntyre simply watched on. Jimmy offered Drew a handshake, but McIntyre simply left the ring, and Jimmy's beatdown on his brother continued until LA Knight, with another huge pop, made the save. Do you think McIntyre should have saved Jey from Jimmy Uso? Or is the Scottish Warrior right to not get involved in other people's problems? Let us know in the comments. This week's SmackDown saw a ton of Blue Brand superstars continue to build momentum on the road to Crown Jewel, but Karrion Kross wasn't among them. The two-time former NXT champion was not featured during this week's SmackDown, despite there being plans for him at one point in time. BWE reports that Kross was planned to have a vignette on the show, but that has been postponed and will air at a later date. It's been reported that Kross is in line for a push, but that is yet to materialize on TV. And whatever WWE has planned for he and Scarlett, it won't be getting started on programming this week. This time a month ago, it seemed that CM Punk was close to returning to WWE, and while WWE has since told Punk no, that hasn't stopped the USA Network from teasing his arrival. After previously responding to a video of Shinsuke Nakamura using the GTS with Best in the World, the USA Network on Instagram commented on a photo of LA Knight wearing sunglasses, stating, "Look at his eyes, what do you see?" This is, of course, a nod to CM Punk's cult of personality theme, as WWE's broadcast partner really wants the fans thinking about someone who's supposedly not returning to WWE. AEW news now, as a few stars have left the company in recent memory, and now it appears that Brock Anderson is no longer a part of the Elite roster. Anderson, the son of Arn Anderson, has been removed from AEW's roster page, with his photo being taken down, and this follows reports in August that his AEW deal was up in weeks. Bearing a striking resemblance to his legendary father, Brock entered AEW with a lot of buzz, but his most recent match was on an August episode of Collision and saw him lose to TNT champ Luchasaurus. The second-generation wrestler began his wrestling career in June 2021 as part of Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory, but like Cody, his AEW run has seemingly ended, and he'll now have to make a name out of the company. SmackDown's main event saw Io Sky retain her Women's Championship against Charlotte Flair, but not without plenty of controversy. Bayley once again interfered for her ally, this time saving Sky's title reign by placing her foot on the bottom rope, resulting in Flair taking out the role model at ringside. We have to point out that Flair needs to be more discreet when calling spots, as it's been too obvious in recent weeks, including a very audible down-up during SmackDown. Bayley being a distraction at ringside was all Sky needed to lay out Flair and secure the tainted victory, which was quickly overshadowed by the return of Bianca Belair, who laid out the heels, with Charlotte to end the show. The pop, the run-in, and the intensity shown by Belair prove that Belair is a top star who has earned everything she's gotten in WWE, in a stark contrast to Flair, who many feel was handed opportunities. This post-match segment suggests a triple threat between Belair, Flair, and Sky at Crown Jewel, but between SummerSlam and Fastlane, we've had our fill of women's title triple threats for now. Perhaps the match could see Belair versus Sky, with Flair at ringside to counteract Bayley, or, heaven forbid, a match between Bayley and Flair, just to prove that not all women's feuds have to be about the title. Whatever the case may be, Belair's return was red hot and put a nice exclamation point on this week's SmackDown. Logan Paul made his return to WWE with a clear message that he plans on becoming the next United States champion, laying down the gauntlet to Rey Mysterio. Paul reminded Rey that he's bested him in a tag match back at WrestleMania 38, and Mysterio had a simple motivation behind accepting the challenge: humble Paul. This was another example of simple storytelling on this week's SmackDown, which has proven to be the better, no doubt thanks to Triple H, allowing their history to speak for itself. If Vince McMahon had been in charge of creative, we likely would have seen short jokes by Paul that would add nothing to the story, and would likely be nothing we and Rey hadn't heard before. Instead, we got a clear story. Paul wants the title, Rey wants to shut Paul up and get his win back, in a simple story that's hardly a bad thing in an industry that often gets too complicated. We also saw the LWO continue their feud with Lashley and the Street Profits, with Montez Ford defeating Santos Escobar with a roll-up. This win was far from clean, as it was during a ringside brawl between Angelo Dawkins and the LWO's Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde that Escobar got the screwy roll-up. A post-match beatdown was cut short by Carlito, who drew a nice reaction from the fans as he cleared the heels out of the ring. Perhaps the biggest story, though, was not about who was at the match, but rather who wasn't, as the LWO's Rey Mysterio was conspicuous by his absence, something Michael Cole pointed out on commentary. Mysterio was no doubt preparing for his face-to-face with Logan Paul, but with Rey continuing to be distant from Escobar, we wonder how long Santos can take Rey not backing him up. Before a backstage vignette, Mysterio thanked Carlito for having the LWO's back, and to say the look on Escobar's face was one of dismay and disbelief would be an understatement. Don't be surprised to see the second-generation star betray the Hall of Famer, perhaps as soon as Mysterio's inevitable defense of the US title against Logan Paul at Crown Jewel. 2 weeks after Cameron Grimes provided an assist that led to Dragon Lee defeating Austin Theory, a tag team match played out this week with Grimes and Lee facing Theory and Grayson Waller. Despite Grimes and Lee meshing well despite never teaming before, it was the heels that got the win in an impressive match, if not one with little stakes. So that was this week's SmackDown, and before it aired, this seemed like just a placeholder edition of the Blue brand, but the show turned out to have some very newsworthy moments. The return of Bianca Belair was a hit, as was the announcement of Paul vs. Mysterio for Crown Jewel, which could see the Maverick win his first title in WWE. Speaking of Crown Jewel, WWE is sowing the seeds for John Cena vs. Solo Sikoa possibly at the event, in what will likely give John his long overdue singles win. Throw in LA Knight and the impressive women's title match, and this week's show had a sense of importance to it, despite seeming like it had been nothing special before it aired on TV. Long before she was the sassy Southern Belle on WWE TV, Lacey Evans proved her toughness as part of the United States Marines, which was often referenced on WWE TV. Once she was in WWE, Evans spent the majority of her run as a heel, and it appears that it wasn't just the fans that she was able to rile up. Speaking on the Power Alphas podcast with Mandy Rose and Tino Sabatelli, Evans claimed that she was constantly getting into fights backstage at WWE events. She said, "Not that I gave a shit to begin with, how I lasted 7 years in WWE, this mouth is the same one backstage. I can't tell you how many damn fights I almost got into. I verbally told them every time, I'll work at McDonald's before I ever sit back and have anybody talk to me the way you talk to me because you feel I owe you something. The only thing I owe is working my ass off to have a good match. Back here, there is no damn way I'm gonna let anybody talk to me just because you've walked roads that I haven't walked. It's been a few times. Luckily, the powers that be liked me enough to, each year, I just got a little more. WWE has been great to me, they've been awesome. I invested every bit of my money, I haven't taken out loans, I have investment properties, real estate, I have a full business paid for, I'm in a good place because I was smart. I don't have time for that. I'll be damned if I'm gonna live like that and have people talk to me a certain way because they feel that I don't owe anybody a damn thing because I work my ass off every day." It should be stated that this is the first time we've heard of said fights, which is not typically how things go, as usually, backstage brawls tend to get leaked to the press at the time. Whatever the case may be, Evans is no longer with WWE, and has said she wasn't cut out for wrestling, and the former superstar is ready to reinvent herself out of the ring. Back in February, wrestler Jason Cade joined WWE as a producer on a tryout basis, as WWE wanted to see how he'd fare in the role before offering him a full-time contract. In an update, Sean Ross Sapp revealed that Cade hasn't been backstage for some time, as he was unsuccessful in his tryout for a role with the company. No reason was given for him not earning a producer role, but the report mentioned that he was brought in to help produce women's matches based on the recommendation of Tyson Kidd. Kidd's producer work is highly respected, but Cade just wasn't cut out to be a WWE producer, leaving the wrestler to reevaluate his opportunities outside the promotion. Next week's AEW Dynamite will take place in Philadelphia, so it's fitting that RVD will be on the show, but despite his multiple appearances for AEW, he's not yet under contract. Sean Ross Sapp reports that RVD is on a per-appearance basis right now, so it remains to be seen whether Tony Khan will ever offer a deal to make the Hall of Famer officially All Elite. We've got WrestleMania news now, as with WWE's 2 biggest nights of 2024 less than 6 months away, plans for the show are coming together. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it's reported that the matches are already being booked for the show, with early plans in place for Jade Cargill at the Showcase of the Immortals. The plan is for Cargill to wrestle Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 40, but it is unclear if this will be Cargill's in-ring debut or whether she'll wrestle before this showdown with the Queen. Other matches in the works include Rhea Ripley vs. Becky Lynch, Jimmy Uso vs. Jey Uso, and the much-anticipated rematch between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. WWE has plenty of time to fill out the rest of the WrestleMania card, and while plans could always change, for now, expect these matches when WWE comes to Philly next April. If recent reports are to be believed, Randy Orton's long-awaited return to WWE TV will happen in time for Survivor Series, or possibly at the premium live event itself. In an update, WrestleVotes adds that new merchandise has been approved for the Viper, and that WWE will present a large social media promotion ahead of his comeback. The The report adds that Orton's return is indeed happening and will likely be at the event or that weekend, as fans won't have to wait much longer to see the former WWE World Champion. On NXT, Brinley Reese, donned in Sol Ruka's ring gear as she was a last-minute replacement, filled in for Jakara Jackson in the NXT Women's Breakout Tournament, and now we know more about why this change happened. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it was revealed that Jackson has suffered a wrist injury, which forced her to be pulled from the tournament, hence why Reese took her spot. While Reese got the spot, she would be defeated by Ariana Grace in the match, as it'll be the second-generation superstar who advances in the Breakout Tournament. It was in April 2020 that Eric Young was released from WWE, and while he would make a return to the company last year, that comeback never saw the Canadian appear on TV. Instead, Young was released from WWE again, this time at his own request, in April of this year, but these releases haven't impacted his relationship with Triple H. Speaking to House of Wrestling, Young said that he has maintained a good relationship with Triple H, who Young worked with in his NXT days, and in fact, they talked very recently. He said, "I still have a very good relationship with Hunter. I was just talking to him a couple of days ago. I loved it. The truth is, I never wanted to leave NXT. I knew that the main roster was the destination, and that's where you made money, and that was kind of the end goal for most people, but the truth was deep in my heart I never wanted to leave in the first place. So yeah, I absolutely loved NXT. The main roster was not the same experience. It was a very poor experience, probably my least favorite out of my 30+ years in wrestling." After this year's release, Young has since returned to Impact Wrestling, where he has found the most success as a wrestler, but with lines still open with Triple H, we can't count out a WWE return. Over to Rampage now, and after quite some build, Mystico, the original Sin Cara, made his AEW debut on last night's show, competing for Mexico's pound-for-pound crown. Meeting Rocky Romero in a 2 out of 3 falls match, Mystico got the first fall and the deciding third fall, and with an impressive performance, this may not be the last we see of Mystico in AEW. As we've seen, Darby Allin is willing to put his body on the line whenever he wrestles for AEW, but his death-defying antics aren't just confined to the squared circle. Allin loves performing high-risk stunts, which often result in the former TNT champion feeling worse for wear, and that was the case when he recently attended a Nitro Circus event. Despite telling the crowd that he has a fractured shoulder which he hasn't given a chance to heal, Allin attempted to pull off a massive jump on a tricycle, but he didn't quite stick the landing. The commentators pointed out that if Allin's shoulder wasn't hurting before, it certainly hurts now, and in the replay, it was clear that Allin had landed on the shoulder he injured at WrestleDream. This injury won't stop Darby Allin, who has been training to climb Mount Everest next year, and we'll have to see what the Daredevil does to try and top this feat when he's ready to perform again. When it comes to wrestlers who have become actors, few have matched the success of Batista, who will be part of the upcoming The Killer's game, but he won't be the only superstar on screen. Speaking on Crash and AJ, Drew McIntyre confirmed reports that he'll have a role, adding that Hollywood has presented him with several opportunities, so we may be seeing more of the Scotsman on the silver screen. And we're ending with Sonya Deville, and it was on the July 28th SmackDown that she suffered a torn ACL in a tag team match, pitting herself and Chelsea Green against Charlotte Flair and Bianca Belair. This was the same match which saw Liv Morgan suffer a shoulder injury when she tried to protect the injured Deville, and fans shouldn't expect the Tough Enough alum back anytime soon. As Sean Ross Sapp revealed in a Fightful Select Q&A, Deville's recovery is progressing slowly, and it was suggested that it could be another 9 to 10 months before she's back in the ring. This is a massive setback for Deville, whose first ever title reign in WWE was cut short due to this injury, but the former MMA fighter has vowed to come back from this stronger than ever. Progress may be slow, but Deville has already been able to shed her knee brace and has said that she is being well looked after by her fiancé, Tony Cassano. If Deville misses another 10 months, it'll be August 2024 by the time she returns, and whatever happens, we're wishing Sonya a full and speedy recovery.